The new CBSN Originals documentary, Fighting for Paradise, Puerto Rico's Future, is shedding light on economic inequality and the push for statehood. CBS News correspondent Lilia Luciano grew up in San Juan. She shows us what Puerto Ricans say they really want for themselves. Here's a preview.
Puerto Rico is a country that is governed without the consent of the governed.
Tensions are rising in Puerto Rico. In the midst of climate, economic, and political crises, natives fear the island is turning into a fiscal paradise for rich outsiders as more locals leave their land behind.
It's designed for depending and extraction.
And that's why they're giving incentives to non-Puerto Ricans to come to Puerto Rico.
Is becoming a state the solution?
This in-between status is embarrassing. Congress should say now yes or no to statehood to Puerto Rico.
Why would I allow for somebody who abused me for 123 years to then consume me?
Or is it becoming independent?
If you depend on someone all of your life, you're not going to grow.
The Puerto Ricans are united.
In order for you to grow, you have to be free and not to depend on someone.
And Lilia Luciano joins me now. Hi, Lilia. Great to see you. Can you first walk us through the bills that are working their way through Congress right now on Puerto Rico?
So good to see you again, Tanya. There are two bills that we have actually discussed before. The Statehood Admission Act is a bill that is seeking to have Puerto Ricans vote on a referendum that asks Puerto Ricans yes or no to the question of statehood. If that bill is passed, there would be a referendum in Puerto Rico. There's currently pro-statehood advocates that are elected by the people, were elected by the people of Puerto Rico to go to Congress and basically lobby for statehood. The other bill, which was introduced by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Nydia Velázquez, two Puerto Rican or of Puerto Rican descent congresswomen, looks at expanding those options, not just to ask Puerto Ricans to vote yes or no on statehood, but to actually create a constitutional assembly where delegates that are voted by the people of Puerto Rico take part in this conversation, in this debate, consult with Congress and other elements of the U.S. government to figure out not only what is possible to offer Puerto Rico outside of the current status or including the status quo, independence, statehood, status quo, or something in between, and then have Puerto Ricans vote on that. Of course, the people who don't favor statehood are advocating for this because it allows for other options.
And when you look at these various bills, what's the likelihood that either of them change Puerto Rico's status?
I think they both do. I mean, if the statehood bill passes in Congress and a majority of Puerto Ricans vote for statehood, then Puerto Rico would have to become a state. If the Self-Determination Act passes and Puerto Ricans vote for statehood or independence or some other form of, enhanced Commonwealth, we're not sure yet what is possible. Some say under the U.S. Constitution, Puerto Rico could be only two things: what it is, a territory, state, or its own independent nation. So if they pass, there's a big change could come. But the problem is convincing Congress. The problem is lobbying in favor of either bill, especially as Congress is seeing that Puerto Ricans are divided on this question and as Democrats themselves are divided on the question.
And how does Puerto Rico's sort of in-between status, this liminal status that it currently has, how does that affect its economy?
Do you have all day? I talked to some experts who say, not every issue that Puerto Rico is dealing with economically, politically, fiscally has to do with the status, but the status complicates or sets the groundwork for all of them. Just to give you an example, for instance, decades ago, Congress allowed for Puerto Rico to offer tax incentives to, especially pharmaceuticals. That was the sector, the industry that was able to take advantage of these incentives back then. That created a lot of jobs, high-paying jobs. It stimulated the Puerto Rican economy. And then in the 90s, Congress took it away. Historically, because Puerto Ricans are not represented in Congress, Puerto Ricans don't have senators in Congress or members of the House, it's hard to advocate for the will of the Puerto Rican people. So historically, as a territory, as what a lot of people, more and more people are agreeing, as a colony, it's hard for Congress to advocate for Puerto Rico because they're not represented there. Like, who's going to speak for them?
Right.
But at the same time, Puerto Rico is not part of a global economy. Because Puerto Rico is not independent, because of the territorial clause, Congress has plenary powers over Puerto Rico. So Puerto Rico can't enter into treaties with the rest of the world. It can't really decide what economy will flourish in Puerto Rico. It can't have control over its own economic fate. So it affects everything.
Mm-hmm. And through your reporting and, talking to Puerto Ricans, what is your sense that most of them are feeling right now about whether they want independence, they want statehood, and, what are their feelings about the economic crisis 2 years after those protests that toppled Governor Rosselló?
I mean, Puerto Ricans are constantly talking about politics, about the economy. Puerto Ricans are affected by the economy. Both Maria and the fiscal crisis, the fiscal crisis in the island has forced hundreds of thousands of Puerto Ricans to have to leave the island. There's no opportunity, there's very little opportunities, and the opportunities that are expanding seem to benefit either a very small percentage of Puerto Ricans who are in business with the people enjoying the new tax incentives, or foreigners. Today, there was a fascinating report by the Center for Investigative Reporting in Puerto Rico that looks at a tax incentive called Act 22, which offers very generous tax benefits to individuals who relocate in Puerto Rico, live there for half of the year, which are not available for locals. So the ones paying the taxes are the ones that can't afford the taxes. And so people are frustrated about these inequalities, about the deepening inequality, of course also about the decisions taken by the Oversight Management Board, which is in charge of all budgetary decisions in Puerto Rico, and that is not an elected body. It's an appointed body federally. And so it's increasingly tense, which is why, as you saw in that preview of our documentary, I say, tensions are rising. After the protests, Puerto Ricans voted in the last election for a member of the same party. So the people who are not pro-statehood, not of that party, are growing very frustrated. And the people who are part of that party, the people who are pro-statehood, are seeing an opportunity to push for statehood in a majority Democrat Congress, and kind of very activated in trying to convince Congress that that's what's best, or that's what they want. However, there's no real economic plan for how statehood would benefit natives. I'm still waiting on a good answer or a strong answer on that.
Right. And Lily, we don't have a lot of time, but really quickly, as someone that grew up in San Juan, how do you see the country as having changed, since you grew up there?
The one thing that I'll say, an observation, because I keep going back, my family's there, most of my friends are there, is the word colony. When I was growing up, I remember, the status quo was known as the best of both worlds, lo mejor de los dos mundos. Now, people on the independence side call Puerto Rico a colony, which they always did. Increasingly, people on the statehood side call Puerto Rico a colony. But those who advocated historically to maintain the Commonwealth status are also saying, look, this is a colony because we are not only ruled by Congress, as we've been able to see over the last decades, but also by this fiscal Oversight and Management Board, which really makes the decisions on where our monies go and where, but not really where they're generated, which is a big issue. So I think if I'm going to leave you with one thought, is the increasing use and consensus of the term colony.
Thank you so much, Lilia Luciano, for all your insights on Puerto Rico. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Tanya.
The CBSN Originals documentary, Fighting for Paradise, Puerto Rico's Future, premieres on CBSN this Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can also stream it now on cbsnews.com/statehood.